Morning, everybody. This is Keith Heller, and we're going to get started here. This is the first in our three-part series on CRM Ready, the Nonprofit CRM Readiness Workshop. And this morning's topic is CRM, what it is, why it's important, and how to make the case for it at your nonprofit. So I'm Keith Heller of Heller Consulting. We've been helping nonprofits for 16 years, over 900 clients, 1,800 projects, helping with nonprofits with their technology needs, fundraising systems, CRM, connecting systems within an organization, connecting people to their systems within your organization, business practices, change management, et cetera, and connecting people out to the community between using CRM to connect you to your constituents and activate them. I'm joined today by Rob Jordan of Idealist and Elizabeth Pope of Idealware. And Rob, would you like to say just a little bit about your organization?
Sure. Idealist Consulting works primarily in the Salesforce ecosystem. We're represented in all time zones. We're referenced by the foundation. Salesforce Foundation is one of the founding 5 deployment partners with over 750 projects deployed. Clients include small to large nonprofits with notable organizations like Nike Foundation, Wounded Warriors Project, and Mercy Corps. We are a B Corporation, and we do dedicate 10% of our private sector revenue toward deployments in the nonprofit sector. We're based out of Portland, Oregon.
Thanks, Rob. Elizabeth?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Pope. I am Senior Researcher at Idealware. Idealware is actually a nonprofit itself. We're a 501c3 organization, and our mission is to help nonprofits make smart software and technology decisions. And we do that by leading research projects into the field, and we don't take a penny from vendors, so we are completely system agnostic. We publish all of our resources for free on our website, idealware.org, so I'm thrilled to be here talking about CRM today.
Great. Thanks for joining me, Elizabeth. And
Sure.
Really glad to have Rob and Elizabeth here. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground in this webinar, and what we're hoping to do is spark ideas, provide information, start a conversation. You're going to the slides are really rich, and we can't possibly do all of them justice, but we hope it's really inspiring and piques your curiosity and answer some of your questions. There's an ongoing dialogue around this topic happening at theconnectedcause.com and also at our LinkedIn group, which we'll talk about at the end, but that is focused on CRM Ready. So with that, let's jump right in. Today's webinar, we're going to cover definition of CRM. That's a big topic. We're going to do our best with it. How can you understand and organize your CRM needs? What are the benefits of doing so? And then how can you express those benefits to others in your organization that start to build a business case so that you get more people on board with the idea of CRM at your organization and get people rolling with it, getting the organization and the board's buy-in to actually start on a CRM initiative. The second webinar in a couple of weeks is about how to plan for CRM. That's getting down to some brass tacks for your organization. And the third webinar in 4 weeks is about how to actually implement CRM successfully. So we look forward to seeing you at all of those.
Mm-hmm.
So first question, the big question, what is CRM? So this question we started to approach last year with a paper that we published called Insights into CRM for Nonprofits. And we talked to CIOs and other C-level execs at 30 of the top nonprofits in the country, which you'll see listed there on the right. And we really wanted to understand what was their perception of CRM, constituent relationship management. Went through structured interviews, talked to these C-level execs, and out of it came this paper, which you can find on theconnectedcause.com. This is what the answer to the question, what is CRM to you? Half of the respondents said CRM is a piece of software. It's a database where we keep everything, and it's the business practices we use to keep that, put that data in and keep it up to date. About a third says, well, CRM is not software for us. It's customer service. It's strategy. It's an approach to working with our constituents where we want to be responsive to them and to their inquiries and contact with us. And about a half a dozen said CRM for us goes beyond customer service and beyond software. It's a strategy. It informs how we approach are everyone who might have contact with or participate in some way with our organization, whether that's internal staff, the people who are funding our organization, our donors, our prospects, the people who are benefiting from our organizations, the beneficiaries of the mission, the people who receive our program services. All of that is an all-encompassing strategy for us, and that's where we start. And those are, each of those views can contain the other as you get more and more progressive. So we started to think, all right, what's our perspective on CRM? What does Heller think? We've worked with almost 1,000 clients, 2,000 projects, all focused on nonprofit technology, up and down the size of organizations, and what have we seen that's worked? And so our perspective is that CRM starts with a strategy, and we're going to talk about that strategy in a couple of slides, but it starts with a proactive relationship to the whole constituent, and I'll explain and unpack a bit what that means in a moment. It's supported by a CRM system, not a single piece of software, but a software environment that can include your CRM, where you're keeping your core constituent information, your CMS, some point solutions to meet specialized needs, financials and GL have to be part of that, tie out the revenue and keep the IRS happy. It's brought together with business processes, potentially with integrations. You're using a BI or data warehouse or some sort of reporting tool to get information, useful information out of the system. And the third leg of the stool is user ownership. You have to have the organization and the staff excited about it and participating in the whole strategy, in the CRM overall, with buy-in, with training, et cetera. So before we dive a little bit more into unpacking this, I wonder, Rob, if you might offer a couple comments, and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, sure. I want to speak particularly on the integration point and then sort of backstep to CMS and the blurring of CRM and CMS, because I think that is something that's happening in this space that is becoming a sort of a point of contention. What is the difference? So integration, we look at CRM as a hub, and integrating your third-party solutions into your CRM is going to be a reoccurring concern. There are essentially 4 types of integrations you can have with a database. They are what we call point-to-point code. That means we hardwire your solution. Your external solution could be a financial solution, what have you, into your CRM. The second is middleware. You can think of that sort of like a bridge between 2 solutions that you lease. You don't own it, unlike a point-to-point code where you can build it out. It's yours to keep. Then there, of course, is applications. Most of the folks on this call are going to be familiar with applications. It's a pre-designed bridge that sometimes is free or can cost you a certain amount month to month. And then finally, there's manual import export. And all of those elements are going to come into play with a deployment of a CRM when you have disparate systems. Typically, there is going to be one of those 4 integration models. That said, CMS, a lot of folks are looking to integrate their CMS with CRM. And they are very different solutions. CMS is really a front-facing, that is your website for folks that are wondering. That is your front-facing solution that is pointing to your constituents. And oftentimes people want to allow their constituents access to their website and then have that information flow into their CRM. CRM is to disseminate that information, and it typically does a better job at disseminating information than the CMS does. Now what's happening in the space is that these 2 solutions are becoming one, and they are often getting integrated with one of the 4 types of integration points that I've described. But what is also happening is that organizations like Salesforce, for example, are looking at making this one single system, looking at Salesforce sites, for example. Without going into too much detail, it is important that you recognize, though, that they are very different solutions, and it's very likely you're going to have those, want to have those integrated in one way or another.
Thanks, Rob. Elizabeth, do you want to offer something as well?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Idealware's institutional perspective is completely aligned with Heller's here. So Idealware works mostly with small to medium-sized nonprofits, and I think that a lot of folks out there are hearing CRM, they're hearing the acronym, they're not sure what it is, but they know they need it, right? And I think that a lot of them are jumping headfirst into the software without first committing to the strategy. And I couldn't agree more that the strategy is the point at which one starts when they start thinking about adopting a CRM orientation.
Thanks. Well, we're going to talk about strategy more in a minute. And but first, before we talk a whole bunch about CRM, at some point you'll probably wonder, why are they so excited about this? What is this going to do? So we're going to cover that in a lot more detail toward the end, but I thought I'd give you a teaser here. The benefits of CRM in summary: a 360-degree view of your constituent, meaning you get to see all of how they're engaged with your organization, not just one slice. Improved communications with those folks. Democratized database. I'm going to leave that as a teaser. Organizational efficiency, working together. Internally, you're going to be a more effective organization. IT gains, we'll talk about that a bit. Activating opportunities. It's not just about doing what you do now better. There are things right now you're not able to do because your systems are holding you back. And then supporting your future. We'll see where, of course, we're biased, but it's our view that CRM is not a nice-to-have for your organization to survive and thrive in the future. It's going to be a necessary component. So with that, we're going to go a little bit more deeply into what is CRM here. So there's a few different definitions that we get, and this is building off of what we saw in that paper. First, bottom left quadrant, people say CRM is a piece of software. It's a piece of system that holds everything for me. If I'm thinking strategically, I might say it's customer service. Okay, and if you're thinking about CRM as customer service and reactively meeting the requests of constituents when they contact you, then software may be sufficient as a solution to support that. But move to the top right quadrant where we're...
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
CRM is a broader strategy for going out to where your constituents are already engaging with you, with each other. And in that case, if you're looking at CRM as a broader strategy, you're going to need CRM systems, a broader environment to support that. So you can see we have these arrows. The engagement sophistication across the top is increasing, so the solution sophistication down below has to increase. Now, I have to admit, this is a bit wonky. This is coming out of kind of the think tank approach that we take to some topics. So if you'll indulge me here a bit, this has a great deal of relevancy to how one starts to structure and plan for a CRM system. So breaking this down a little bit, well, all right, let me back up. This is where most of us are starting, right? This is what our data systems look like right now, a bunch of silos, unrelated to each other, out in the field, lonely. And now I'll admit, when you look at some of the later slides that I'm going to present about what a CRM environment looks like, you might go, hey, but wait a minute, there's still multiple systems. Well, yes, there are, but there's a difference, okay? There will be fewer buildings out there than what you have now, guaranteed. Most organizations, when you start to unpack it, they don't have a few systems. They don't have several systems. They have dozens of systems, whether those are full-blown databases and pieces of software that have been bought. They can be FileMaker databases and Access systems and a SQL database over here, spreadsheets galore. When you start to add all of that up, there's a lot. And the difference when you move into a CRM environment over time is, one, you've chosen to move in that direction. It's not accidental if you have multiple systems, and you've planned for how those systems are going to support your strategy and how they're going to relate to each other. But most of us right now, let's call a spade, this is where we're starting. So CRM as customer service. This is a common next step out of chaos. The first thing people aim for is, geez, all right, I'm going to have a strategy where I'm able to meet the requests of my constituents more effectively, drive transparency. These are really worthy goals. And while we think that CRM as a full-blown strategy is where you want to aim as an engagement strategy, CRM as customer service is an excellent way station. Okay? As long as you don't think this is where we're going to end. We're going to end with, I want to just be able to provide good customer service on a reactive basis. Right now, it looks like a strategic advantage, and it may be for a brief period of time. But your constituents are really getting used to good customer service. They're getting it from Zappos and Amazon and Netflix. Blame those folks. They're getting excellent customer service. And right now, if you look at the rest of the nonprofit sector, you may not see a lot of your peers or competitors who have that. So it'll look like an advantage. But in fact, the ability to deliver good customer service is getting commoditized. And so it'll be a temporary benefit. But over the long term, you really want to move from customer service into CRM as a full engagement strategy. Now, paired with customer service, when people think about that as their aim, they look at their CRM systems needs and they think, well, I just need a good piece of software. I need a single piece of software that'll take care of all these pieces for us. And not only are they looking for it, they're hoping for it. Oh, we hear from so many organizations, can you tell me that one piece of software that'll make all my problems go away? And I wish that we could, but there isn't a silver bullet, except for maybe the smallest and simplest organizations. Otherwise, you have to sort of acclimate yourself. I'm going to have a more rich environment, but I'm going to plan for it. And so this is where we start to talk about the broader approach to CRM. And I will admit,
just quickly jump in. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just wanted to add that for small nonprofits, it is perhaps accessible to have all of your data in one system, but it is absolutely the cart leading the horse that way. I think, as Rob said earlier, as long as your systems are interoperable, as long as they can talk to each other, it doesn't matter if you have just one holy grail system. I think that that is absolutely the impossible dream for most nonprofits. So even the organizations that Idealware works with, who tend to be smaller, maybe have less complex needs, they often, if they want to go into a deep dive on their constituents, will need to operate multiple systems in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. And again,
Sure.
if you know going into it that that's what you're going to do, it's a little more palatable, and you can make it work a little bit better.
Absolutely.
But this is something that, frankly, vendors won't always tell you. So we're here to. Yeah.
I'd actually like to. Yeah, I'd also like to mention that to that point, it really does help if you select an ecosystem that allows for that type of integration. Mm-hmm. For folks that are out there, trying to bring all these disparate systems together, it is more likely and going to be more cost-effective if you can do that within one ecosystem. If you're trying to bring two very different systems together, we can do it, but it does cost more. So keep that in mind as you guys are, for folks that are just shopping around looking to move the entire infrastructure, keep that in mind. There are plenty of different ecosystems out there to consider too.
Yeah, and well, you'll see this bias as we move through here, but I think we'd all agree planning is absolutely the most important piece. In fact, that's why we have an entire webinar devoted just to that in a couple of weeks, because whatever ecosystem, you've got to think about it up front. Okay, so what is this CRM as a strategy that I'm talking about? This is not waiting for your constituents to contact you, to call, to email, etc., and then being able to quickly respond and transparently. It's going to where your constituents are already and expanding the reach of your organization, expanding the relationship that you're having with them. So I'm not going to read through every bullet, but I'm going to give an example. And this example is the Jewish Community Center of San Francisco. We're doing a really, for me, inspiring project with them right now around replacing probably 15 to 20 different systems with a single environment. And what's exciting about this is we're crossing about 9 business units. What's really exciting is the vision that their executive director and IT folks brought to us, which is they said, we want to stop operating in silos, not only in our systems, but how we as an organization engage with our constituents. And they started to describe it to me, and they said, listen, we have people here who come and use our fitness facilities. And as they walk in, they see that we're having plays and performances, but it doesn't really register with them necessarily. And at the same time, people are coming to performances, they don't know that we have adult education classes. But some of those adults might come to those classes and not realize that they could drop their kids off for a before-school program, or have them picked up for an after-school program. Those same kids could go to summer camp. And how do we expand the ways that our constituents can engage with us as a community center? And so they saw that a CRM system would help give them the data and the tools necessary. Now then, as we started to work with the organization around those data and tools, I think the most pivotal thing was we sat down with people from multiple departments to talk about even a simple question: what's a constituent? What's a member? Right? And we had people from those different departments speaking up. And at the end of those conversations, people would say, you know what, I never realized, but the person who comes to the fitness center, I could tell them about the other programs that we have. I could tell them about the classes. I could tell them about the performances. You know, someone who comes and picks up the kids, I could tell them, you know, hey, we also have a before-school program. We also have summer camp. And suddenly the organization as a whole was starting to think about how can we more deeply engage our constituents and work with each other. And this has driven a cultural and organizational change in the organization that goes well beyond a piece of software. Now, they need a software environment to make it work, but now they're thinking, how can we activate everything we have in the service of broadening and deepening how we serve the community? So this is a full-blown CRM strategy. And when you have that in place, it helps determine the rest of the needs that come out of that. And I'll make a special note. Where we're seeing a lot of this happen is in social. Nonprofits have experimented with social for enough time to realize there's something there with Facebook, with Twitter, et cetera. It isn't necessarily fundraising or just fundraising, but our constituents are out there and they're talking about us. They're talking about what we do. They're talking about it with each other, and we need to be engaged in that. So that's a particularly salient opportunity right now. Rob, you wanted to make a couple comments here as well?
Yeah, and I just want, before I start, I just want to mention we do not take referral fees from any of our solution partners. So if I've mentioned a particular solution, it's simply because I think it's a good one, not because we get any sort of kickback. And to that end, mixing social with CRM, we work with solutions like Action Sprout, for example, that will allow you to take donations on Facebook and have that information kick back directly into the Salesforce platform. Other solutions that we work with that are native, such as Salesforce Ideas, allows you to do crowdsourcing, get opinions from your constituency, and get votes on various different attributes of your mission that you can focus on. For example, Keith had mentioned events. If you can actually put events out there that people can vote on and know whether or not to repeat an event again, or possibly to retire a certain event based on the feedback that you get from your constituency. All that information can dump into your database where you can get tangible outcomes that you can leverage for all sorts of decisions. And I'm going to speak a little bit later on how this information can actually be leveraged towards getting foundations to notice your fundraising efforts.
And I think what I would highlight out of what you said, Rob, is that you start to think cross-departmentally as an organization. You're tapping into different aspects of your organization and how collectively you can go out to your constituency to drive more activity, more commitment, and more value to your constituents. So it's a different approach to CRM.
It is, and you know, to that end, also, I'd add that we see this all the time. Disparate. You talk about those silos. Those silos are also communicative silos that happen within an organization. A lot of folks don't know what the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And oftentimes this data, when it gets aggregated into a single place, allows for ideas to blossom that wouldn't otherwise they wouldn't otherwise be able to implement, simply because they see what's going on in these different parts of the organization.
Rob, that is the perfect segue in the next couple of slides that I have. So the next 3 slides are all about the CRM systems that will underlie and support that strategy. So this is the word slide, and then I have a couple of image slides. But CRM is a system, multiple pieces of software working together, right? That's the difference between the pile of systems you have now and those silos and what you would have moving forward is getting them to work together and choosing them intentionally and choosing how they're going to be organized. But this is really it's a more sophisticated environment than a single piece of software. But as we said, single piece isn't practical for most people, isn't achievable. And multiple pieces working together is necessary to support the kind of proactive strategy and philosophy that we've just talked about. So what does this look like? So I've got a couple of slides that will give us a view on that. This one, easy, approachable, probably self-explanatory. I'm kidding. So let me unpack this one a little bit. Thank you, Elizabeth. So this is this slide. This slide gets an hour all to itself, but not this hour.
Right.
So I'll move through it. Give you some perspective on it, and then please print it out, put it on your bathroom mirror, put it on your pillow at night. Over time, hopefully this will make a good deal of sense. But at the very top, I want to point out, big red letters, constituent engagement strategy. The most important thing on the slide is a strategy. Right? So before we can start to talk about the systems, we have to have that strategy in place because that's going to drive what systems we have. But when we start to talk about systems, there are 3 key systems that every organization has, whether you planned it or not. Bottom left, you have a donor system of some sort, of fundraising database. Bottom right, you have something that's helping you manage your mission, deliver your programs, even if it's just spreadsheets and FileMaker and Access. And then online engagement. We have some way in which we're communicating and interacting with our constituents online. Now that's your website. It could be forms on your website. It'll be your donation pages. It'll include your email, your social. These may all be their own silos right now. But these are the, collectively, these are the 3 spheres where we see software systems coming into play. Now, beyond that, bringing these together is on the top right there, business practices. Tie these different systems together. Intentional business practices, not accidental business practices, accidental, we've always done it this way kind of practices. At the bottom there, internal connections between the systems and between the departments, and communication. These are absolutely key. So you see these also represented on the left, workflow and business practices, on the right, internal communication. This is the people side of your organization. Right? You don't just put software systems in place and they work. You have to have, and arguably even more importantly, you have to have your people working together and working with those systems. Now, even the best teams and the best software don't necessarily get you all the information that you need with touch of a button. So business intelligence at the top is your whatever your custom reporting tools are to help you get the information, get the data out of that software, and turn it into something usable for you. Now, most people's favorite reporting tool, or maybe not favorite, but most used, is the infamous Excel. Right? Well, you want to, yeah, isn't that that's everybody's favorite. But you want to move towards something that's a little more intentional and repeatable, and that's where a business intelligence or reporting tool comes in. And then sometimes those tools don't get you exactly what you need. So you actually have to move data around, and that's when you look at the bottom, data integration. So that's a lot to pack onto one slide, but we try to get the overall CRM environment articulated here. And Rob, did you want to say a little bit about this as well?
Well, I did want to mention that when you talk about an engagement strategy, oftentimes what we will do is we'll work backward. We'll start with the reports that an organization requires, and then we'll build the database around what's necessary to aggregate those reports. Interestingly enough, most organizations, from small to large, don't really know the outcomes they need to measure. So when you get into these, when you start developing a strategy, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to know what you are looking for out of your database. And a simple exercise is simply to ask people from your departments, what information do you want to see? And that will often guide you on the strategy.
Rob, I got to say amen to that. That's, a great CRM implementation starts with the end. When we have this system in place, what are we going to be able to do? Often we think of it in terms of outputs. What lists are we going to need to be able to generate to engage with our constituents? And then what reports are we going to need to measure how well we did? Right? And you start to articulate those and put those out there, and that's going to drive how you set up your system. So I think fantastic comment.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add briefly to that, Keith, is that there really are two types of outcomes that typically, to make it simple, that MPOs need to focus on. One is your constituents and fundraising, so promoting your mission and getting fundraising for that, and then also foundations. And each require different information sets. And oftentimes you can get a business process person to come in and help you figure out what are the distinct reports you require. So again, those are the foundations that you're getting grants from and your constituents, figuring out what information you need in order to get the most investment from those two silos.
And if you're wondering where to go for more about this, I would not be surprised if this becomes one of the conversations on the LinkedIn group under CRM Ready. So this slide looks at the CRM environment sort of from an architectural perspective. Then, think of it as a home. But then, who's inhabiting the home, right? And so the next slide here looks at your CRM from the perspective of what constituencies is it going to house, what departments are going to use it, what department needs is it going to meet, or what group of users are going to use it. So here we've tried to represent again in a single slide sort of everything that might populate a CRM environment. So you've got direct mail and email, which is sort of mass communications, mass, often fundraising, but not necessarily just that. Then major individual institutional gifts, kind of one-on-one. And then you move into some online space, online advocacy, giving, peer-to-peer. Those are systems that you are hosting, and then people are coming directly to you. And then you move out into the social environment. People already are, and you engage there with the Facebook and Twitter and the networks. And then the green slices. How do you support the mission itself? How do you deliver your programs? Maybe you have partners who help you deliver those programs. Well, those people and institutions would be part of your CRM. And then, of course, the beneficiaries of the mission itself can be part of your CRM. If you have that, if you have that kind of information and relationship with your beneficiaries, and then your own internal teams, IT and HR, all of these can be part of the CRM environment. And in fact, when you start to bring the systems together, and this point was made earlier, when you start to bring these together, you start to see patterns that you couldn't before, right? And so you can see how certain constituents actually cross these different pieces of the pie right now, but you didn't know it before. And if you know it, you can engage with them more deeply. You can see what kinds of patterns are typical of your most engaged and desirable constituents, and how can you replicate those patterns? right, to build a more engaged constituency. Now, this is all looking at it from the positive perspective. I don't like to be, negative, but I will say, unfortunately, there's a downside to not doing this. And right now, we hear a lot of people say, well, I don't really know which of my constituents are involved in A, B, and C. And so you're communicating them right now without that information. And guess who knows that you're doing that? They know. They know that they're getting multiple communications from you where it's pretty clear the left hand and the right hand don't know what they're doing. Right? And when that happens, they don't call you and say this is happening. Or they might, and those are the unpleasant calls to take. But it's better than them not calling you, which is more likely what happens. And when they don't call you, what they're doing is they're going and they're calling someone else. And they're becoming part of another organization's mission. So getting all your information into a single environment, a unified environment, not only allows you to act on opportunities, it also prevents constituent dissatisfaction. So this, again, is a slide that can really be unpacked over time. It represents, again, ways that a constituent can interact with you. It represents different departments and how they can start to work together, and users. And one of the interesting things is that a lot of users have similar needs. They need to process revenue. They need to send emails. And everyone's doing it differently. And so what this also shows is that when you start to bring these groups together, they can start to work in a similar fashion, which is simply much more efficient. Rob, do you want to take us back to some big picture here about the cycle of CRM?
Yeah, sure. So when we're looking at the big picture, mission, goals, and measurement, we really start to look at how a organization is going to adopt the CRM in its entirety. Where are you? Who are you going to be working with? What are you doing? These are questions that a lot of folks aren't really asking. And I've just recently returned from a conference, Council on Foundations. And one of the challenges that they've run into is that they are looking, it's an interesting problem, they're looking on who to give money to. But the challenges they're running into is they're having difficulty finding organizations that can actually show practical outcomes for their efforts. An example might be, we teach people to read, and we distributed 2,000 books last year. That does not get you the information that they're looking for. What they're looking for is how many people actually read, how many people are actually learning to read, how many folks are actually getting an education. And you're able with CRM to do things such as send out surveys of your constituency, get feedback from them, and then take that information and aggregate it in tangible outcomes that foundations actually are going to be able to measure and make an investment. And that's ultimately what you're trying to do with your donor dollars and your grant funding. It also, the other thing is helping you do your work intuitively from day to day. Prompts can be set up in CRM to allow you not to forget, for example, to follow up on a particular donation, or to make sure to engage a constituent that might be interested in signing up for a program. These prompts are allowing you to keep on task. And these types of things are essential from day to day, and they actually help you operate with a much thinner staff, and we all know that that's a constant concern of nonprofits, than having to go in and check every possible engagement that you've had day to day. The other thing is measuring what worked and what didn't work. In the previous slide, Keith had talked about bringing in all these sort of disparate promotional efforts into one database and then measuring the outcomes. If you send a mass email blast and you find that your donations increase aligned with that donation blast, you know that that particular email blast was effective. There are just as many ineffective email blasts as there are effective ones. And being able to know which which is which is an enormous advantage in how you spend your time from day to day. And then finally, improving analysis. You are going to be unable to measure your effectiveness if you have no means to measure it. And this is something that we see often for folks that are using either very old databases or simply Excel spreadsheets. They are being very reactive. They're not really pushing in one direction or another. They're just collecting their donations and responding to their constituency rather than actually making conscious analysis on how to move forward. So this is, rather than go too much further, Keith, perhaps you got a few things to add on this.
Well, Rob, you know, listening to your example there, what I think is, you've just described a learning organization. And a CRM system gives you the tools to carry out and then learn from, analyze what's worked and what hasn't, and improve your organization because you've got that full view. So, you know, I think with that, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of CRM. I gave you those teaser slides earlier, and we're going to start to we're going to leave sort of the more in-depth analysis of what is CRM and how can we start to think about it. And I will grant you that was a lot to think about, so it takes time to digest. Now we're going to move into what are the benefits of CRM and how do we start to describe it and advocate for it with others inside and outside organizations. So next few slides, benefits of CRM. First one, engaging with your constituents. You can get that 360 view. Okay, so you can treat your constituents as a whole person, right? And when you understand how they're relating to your organization in the multiple ways they do that, you can treat them more completely. So if someone is, you know, calling you because they want to avail themselves of some of your services, and you can see that, hey, they've been a participant in some of our peer-to-peer events and they've donated themselves, then you can thank them for that right then and there. Or if you're doing an analysis of, oh, geez, who's going to be in our major donor portfolio this year, you might look and see that you have trends where if someone has attended an event and been a volunteer, those are the people who tend to give larger gifts. But you need all your data in one place to do that, right? And that'll allow you to have deeper relationships. It really supports communications, reaching the right people with the right message. And we used to say, for those of you who have been around as long as I have, 20 years in nonprofits, we used to say at the right address. Now we say through the right channel, because we can start to understand, oh, this person tends to interact social, they tend to interact online, they tend to interact email, phone. All right, we're going to mirror that back to them. Or they've requested a particular way of communication with Department A. I'm over in Department B. I'm going to follow that preference in my communications with them also. And again, Department A and Department B are working in the same system, then that becomes possible. It's also, it's more responsive to the constituent. It's also more efficient and more cost-effective. Information benefits of CRM. You get a completer picture. That was on purpose, but you get a more complete picture of your individuals and how they're engaged with you, and across the organization, who your constituents are, and again, the trends in which groups of people tend to interact with you in which way, so that you can plan more appropriately. Democratizing the database. This is always something I'm really excited about. Is in a siloed environment, only certain people have access to certain systems and to the information in certain systems. When you bring them together into a unified environment, then I can see what everyone else is seeing, and everyone else can see what I'm seeing. And that freedom of information can spur better conversations with your constituents and better conversations in your organization that can lead to innovation and improved relationships with your constituents. Reports can be pulled that go across your organization, and those reports can be made available more easily to everybody if everybody's part of that same unified environment. Access for all. Everyone can access it. And I put in here access from anywhere. This is based on a little bit of an assumption that CRM system is environment is built in a way that allows for broader access. These days, you don't launch a system in a way that it can't be accessed by more people. It's not sensible to. So most people are going to SaaS, software as a service, internet-based software, or at least providing a rich remote access experience. So that's all of the three of those roll up to a more available system to everybody. Here on the people side of things, you're going to get organizational efficiency. Again, fewer silos, less places to go to look for information about constituents, less systems to be managing or to be learning. One of the challenges we see for staff is that, geez, I have to work in and therefore understand 3 or 4 or 5 systems. If you're in a unified environment, that number is going to drop. And better business practices, because one of the examples I gave earlier was revenue handling. Well, revenue handling can go across multiple departments and be done right now. You know, if you have 6 departments, you're probably handling revenue in 8 different ways at least. But when you start to bring things into a unified environment, you can standardize how do we handle cash and checks and credit cards and online transactions and such in our organization, and that just and what's best for our organization, right? So that leads to greater efficiency.
Keith, I'd like to speak briefly to this. Something that we see a lot of are organizations that approach us and they really don't have process in place. There's nothing for all intents and purposes. You had some very creative people build a process behind maybe a database like FileMaker Pro or Access, or maybe they've sort of pushed through a particular solution that wasn't originally designed for nonprofit facilitation. So what ends up happening when you adopt a new database oftentimes is that there's a business process already baked in. And you can leverage that as a starting point. And we see huge advantages of folks just picking up and moving over into new solutions that have already been designed to facilitate a fundamental nonprofit practice. So keep in mind that there are different shades of CRM. There are CRMs that are designed specifically for membership organizations. There are CRMs that are designed for student enrollment. There are CRMs designed for general nonprofit fundraising. And these are all providing a business process that's already developed. So keep that in mind. Your starting point is a big part of this selection process, and it can often give you a huge boost in productivity simply by adopting a solution that was designed to facilitate whatever it is your mission is trying to push.
Again, right on, Rob. And you know, I would note here at the bottom, working together. This for us is probably one of the biggest changes that happens at an organization, and one of the most impactful, which is the people in your organization start to get on the same page. We sometimes say we're doing covert organizational development. You know, in a project, you're getting people to think similarly about information, think similarly about business practices, and start to work in a similar fashion. And pretty soon it dawns on people, wait a minute, we're using the same business process, we're using the same tools, and we're working with the same constituents. Holy moly, we're part of the same organization. You know, and I say this a little facetiously, but of course, how couldn't we have been? We all had the same business cards, the same organizations on our paychecks. But there's this bonding going, oh my gosh.
It's that light bulb.
And that, oh my, yeah, exactly. And that light bulb causes people to work differently together.
And side note, we're all reaching out to the same constituents, so let's get on the same page, right?
And I'd
like
to mention
the same organization, but yeah, if I could just ask you real quick about for small organizations who struggle with data hygiene in general. I work with them a lot in trying to segment their databases and really clean them up. A CRM strategy can be super useful just for the reason that Keith and Rob has mentioned, that there's less systems to touch. So it can be a real asset. I'd also say I totally agree with Rob in saying that a lot of nonprofits have no processes in place. I would caution that just because a software product hawks a particular process, make sure it fits with your organization's quote-unquote brain. because if you don't take a good hard look at your actual processes and just sort of go along with whatever processes or ways of doing things that the software promotes, that may not be the best for your organization, especially if you've never done any sort of strategic planning or thinking about the way you communicate.
It's so true, Elizabeth. I mean, there are CRMs out there that, of course, if you have one attribute of your organization that is facilitating fundraising, and they still happen to have a CRM that is around fundraising, suddenly your organization is just about some fundraising for that salesperson. So that's something to consider for sure. I'd also, just as a side note, we did a deployment down in Central America. We operate in both English and in Spanish. And one thing I thought was very interesting is when we put them on a single database, they were an English and Spanish organization, their efficiencies increased. And one of the things that revealed itself in that particular project is we realized that language really wasn't what was the gap in their organization. It was they were not using the same processes. And we rediscovered those same gaps in organizations that speak the same language. It's fascinating. So just keep that in mind. The CRM is actually a conduit oftentimes to create communication and keep you all on the same page.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm going to note, before we move on to the next couple of slides, in that paper, CRM Insights, we asked 9 questions. And across those 9 questions, there were a lot of similar answers. But there's a lot of variance, too, so it made for a very rich conversation. But the one question that everyone had the same answer to was this one. When you go to do a CRM implementation, what have you had be the biggest challenge, or do you think would be the biggest challenge? And would it be technical, or would it be on the people side? And everyone to a person said, it's on the people side. Getting people to change and getting them to move towards change and feel comfortable with change and participate in change is the single biggest thing, because right now we act separately. So I'm going to come to this in just a moment, sort of as we go through making the case, how to approach this. But let me wrap up with the benefits. Final slide here. There are some benefits around IT. And now again, this is the assumption here is that you're moving to a hosted or a SaaS internet-based environment. Total cost of ownership typically goes down because hardware costs go down. It's easier to support. Would you rather support 30 systems scattered all over, or half a dozen really well thought out systems that are supposed to work together? It's pretty obvious where you fall on that. And then the benefits of CRM, supporting your future, right? Building those relationships. We talked about that. Innovation, adopting new platforms that are pointed towards the future, not tied to the past. Technology-wise and communications-wise, that's huge. And adopting CRM platform that will grow with you over time, also critical. So here in our last several minutes, let's talk about making the case and activating your stakeholders. So how do you take this information back to others and get them excited about it? Well, clearly, you just show them one of my slides with 1,000,000 words on it, and they can't fail to see the benefit, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe not. Yeah, all right. So maybe we need to break that down a little bit. So first, you need to start to think about and ask questions internally. What's the need for CRM? Who's going to use it? What constituents are they going to interact with? And what are they trying to achieve through those interactions? Start to map that out. That pie chart that I had earlier, you could think for each of those types of constituents, geez, do we need CRM for this? If we had it, what would it mean? What could we achieve if we had better systems there? What is the opportunity? So if we had a single unified environment, how could we better serve our clients? How could we better communicate, engage with our constituents? What would it mean for us collectively as an organization, for each of the departments, if we had a 360-degree view? What kind of information would we be able to get if we weren't operating in such siloed systems? What would it mean to IT if they had less systems to support? And overall, if you look back at the mission statement of your organization and the strategies you've mapped out, how might those better be supported by a more robust, unified CRM environment? Now this, on the other hand, what happens if we don't do it? How does it look if we go another year, 3 years, 5 years? with our current systems or current strategy, and strategy there might be in quotes. It might just be an accidental strategy with our systems. What are comparable and competing nonprofits doing? And I will tell you that in every sector of nonprofits, there are organizations that are moving ahead with a richer CRM environment. And so if you're not, that's going to show up. Now, of course, all of you on this call, you're forward-thinking, you're handsome, you're funny. I can say all these things because you're all on the call. But you have an edge up because you're starting to think about this and you're starting to move towards it. Right? And then lastly, and most importantly, how are your constituents going to benefit if you have it, and how are they going to be impacted if you don't? Are you going to be able to deliver less of your mission if you don't move forward with this? And this is something people don't often think about. They just think about, well, I couldn't come up with enough benefits and we don't have the money, so we're not going to do it. Okay, but what if you don't do it? So how do you get started? You start to look at what are our strategies, what's working, what's not, what systems do we have. We have a whole methodology for looking at systems, which we also will share with you, as you'll see at the end. Processes, again, what's working and what's not in our business practices, and where do our people stand with potentially moving towards a unified environment. And this is, again, because people challenges can be bigger than technology and process challenges. This is where there may be even more to talk about and think about. All right, but this is where you start to, this is where you move towards making the case. And then to do this, you need to activate your stakeholders. So last few slides here are key types of stakeholders. Management leadership. So for management leadership to get on board with the CRM initiative, you have to be able to go to them and help show them a vision, and then they have to take that vision, right, and articulate it back to the rest of the organization. They don't have to drive the vision necessarily, but they have to articulate to everyone else, here's how the vision for this CRM initiative is going to support our strategies and our mission as an organization. They're also responsible for resources, prioritizing and allocating resources. Right? And they have to make sure that there are people who are in charge of the project, those people have time to do it, and that there's money for the project. And finally, they're going to be asked to communicate throughout the project, not at the detailed level of, this is what we're going to do next is step 214B, but, hey, folks, this is important, continues to be important, because at a certain point, the going gets tough in these projects, and there has to be someone at the top who is supporting and leading the charge.
It's really essential. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely key. When you get into the staff, why is it important to get staff on board? Because user adoption is the primary indicator of success. It's not how many records do I have in the system. It's not how beautiful and sparkly shiny is my system or how gorgeous my flow charts are. It's are people actually using it, right? And more so, the value of CRM is because not only are people using it the way you told them to, but they're starting to see ways they can use the system and use that unified information to better engage with constituents. So how do you do that? Get people involved early on. Ask them for ideas. Ask them about their concerns. Try to get their, get their commitment. It's a lot of conversation before you even get into the technical. You also want to start to help them understand what the benefits are going to be to their day-to-day work. Okay. Now, there's going to be varying level of benefits. Some people are going to benefit a great deal, and some people less so. So you have to be honest about that. You also have to be honest about the fact CRM initiatives can be challenging. It takes time. There's compromises. But for the organization as a whole, there's a lot to be gained here. And at their level, there may well be things that you can start to articulate early on. And then over time, staff get really involved in the initiative by helping with the design process, by helping to test what you build, by helping to implement through the implementation process, and then in maintenance. So in that way, it can take longer to involve staff and users in a CRM initiative, but it's their system when you're done with it. Finally, I'm just going to quickly note getting the board on board because we just have a couple minutes here. Why? Because the board is going to fund this, right? It's a long-term vision. It's not a single piece of software we're going to adopt. It's a whole environment we're going to start to build. It's a strategy we're going to support. So that's going to take time and it's going to take money. How do you do that with the board? you articulate the vision and the benefits to the organization. A lot of what you steal my slides and make them yours. You look at your organization, see which of these pieces really make sense for us. When you're in your presentations, you stay at the big picture. You don't get into the details. They don't want that. And you enlist a champion. And it quite often happens that people on the board have CRM at the companies that they work for. So we have a couple slides here that, due to time, I'm going to invite you to come back to our blog, and I will write a post about this. But these slides summarize how did we get to the point we are now in thinking about CRM, and why is it important.